James, welcome to the show.
What up, though?
Hey, appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. You have, gotta have the king of Pistons Twitter come on and talk some Pistons with us. So
I don't know if that's me, but I do my part. I play my part.
Who would you say is the king of Pistons Twitter?
See, I look at Pistons Twitter like it's the fans.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Obviously, we're involved because they follow the team and we cover the team. I'm gonna roll with my guy Nick Henkel, man. I think that's the king of Pistons Twitter. Shout
That's a fair
out
answer.
to him and the Bun and Cardigan show, and yeah, that's my guy. I'm gonna go with Nick.
All right, the first question I had prepared for you, though, especially after the Julius Randle news, is can you play point guard?
I
'Cause,
can. I'm just not in shape right now. Give me two and a half weeks to get my cardio back up, and I could give 7-minute stints in each half. That's about it.
Obviously, James, we watched the Pistons, fall to the Knicks last night, 94-85, and they were holding their own. At least that first unit on the floor, the starters were doing their part, and as soon as they put the second unit into the game, it just fell to the wayside. And to be expected, a lot of these guys are on the G League team, and still trying to adjust to the NBA level. And obviously, I want to get your thoughts on some of the guys. Like we've seen Derek Walton come in and step up. Luca Garza's definitely had a bigger role. What do you take away from some of those guys that have filled that position?
Yeah, I think Derek Walton showed that he is has had a taste of NBA basketball before. He's played over 50 career games. He looked competent out there. He wasn't sped up all the time. I think he could be a team's third point guard, like an emergency point guard, and I think they would be fine with that. He's got a good pace. He was setting guys up. Obviously, a lot of turnovers, but he hasn't played at that level in a while. Had 9 assists or 8 assists. So I mean, yeah, he's a guy that if you needed an emergency third point guard, I think he would be serviceable. Outside of that, it wasn't the best showing from the G League guys. I think they shot 18.6% from the field. Everybody not named Sadiq Bey and Hamidou Diallo. And, you don't expect much from that group, but you probably expect more than 18% from the field. Luca Garza has had moments where he scored the ball well, but last night for him to play 39 minutes and only have 4 points, especially with kind of his deficiencies on the defensive end, he's got to give a little bit more offensively. But yeah, other than that, it's kind of slim pickings. I think they're just trying to get through this phase of the COVID outbreak and get some NBA guys back.
Yeah, and I guess you could say maybe one out of the positives out of this whole COVID situation has been the reemergence of Sadiq Bey. This was a guy, that I actually talked about on my podcast during the preseason as was going to be the X factor for this Pistons team, and he struggled for the first 20 or so games of the year, and now he's going off on a clip for his last 7 games. He's been lights out, and I know a lot of people are saying it's a part of that headband. So what are you seeing from him, that's really kind of turned his season around?
I mean, there's a few things that it's hard to pinpoint, and we're going to talk to Dwayne here about it soon. I think, just to put it simply, he's making shots he wasn't making for the first couple months of the year. Like, he was not shooting well from 3, and those shots are falling at a better clip. And I think it does help. Like, of course, it comes kind of parallel with him putting on the headband, but it also comes parallel with Jeremy Grant being out. There's one less guy, kind of ball-dominant guy, moves Sadiq up the pecking order, a little bit more room to operate, to feel the ball, to get in a groove. I would imagine that if you ask people, that probably has helped him. He's had some more sets run from him out of the 4. He's played more 4. So it's a lot of things, but I think the overarching theme is he's hitting shots he wasn't hitting, and the shots people kind of expected him to hit to start the year. And I was never really worried about the shooting. I always kind of figured it would come around. The guy has shot well at every level, and to think he just couldn't shoot anymore would have been ridiculous on all of our parts. So for him to get it together, it was a matter of time. I'm sure it took a little bit longer than Pistons fans wanted, but he's been balling kind of this past 9 games or so.
Yeah, it was tough for me to, I guess, evaluate whether it was a true break of the sophomore slump or, like you said, Jeremy not being there and him having to take, more of the load and scoring with all these guys out. But I did want to ask.
I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, it's part of that, but I also think it's a good sign. His efficiency is good. It's not like just big numbers. Like he's been fairly efficient, and obviously teams are focusing on him pretty high up the scouting report. But so for him to have fairly efficient numbers is a good sign.
Yeah, I kind of want to ask this team in general, kind of going through a little bit of a sophomore slump because we don't see the fight, I guess, that we saw in the roster last year. I was kind of wondering, like, what's your take on that? Is it a chemistry thing? Like, what's going on with these guys? Because last year, yes, they lost a lot of games, but they're very competitive. And we saw them take down a couple of Giants throughout the season too. Like, what's going on with this team this year? Are they still gelling, or when everyone was healthy, I should say?
Yeah, a lot of people have made a lot of that kind of the competitiveness thing, and I would say a few things. I'd say as of late they've been pretty competitive. I think maybe only the Spurs game that I can recall off the top of my head that they've really got smacked around. That was an ugly game, but I mean they are younger than they were last year, which it does truly matter. Like there's a reason that this team continues to fall apart in the fourth quarter. Like you look at the history of young teams across the league, like when the game gets tight, the mistakes come, and that's just not a Pistons problem. That's a lot of the NBA problem when it comes to young teams. Yeah, I mean, from the start of the year, last year they had Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin, which are two veterans. Wayne Ellington shot the lights out of the ball. They don't really have that veteran presence this year. Kelly Olynyk's been out for 6 weeks. Corey Joseph hasn't been the same player he was toward the end of last year. Rodney McGruder is kind of an emergency player. So you're missing the veterans that you had a year ago. And the East has gotten better. I mean, there's only 2 bad teams in the East, and one of them is the Pistons, and the other one's the Orlando Magic. And I mean, you look across the board, all the other teams are great to good to average. So that has not been the case in the East for a while. Usually, you could point to a couple teams that were pretty bad: your Orlando's, your Cleveland's, your Bulls. I'm sure I'm missing a few. Atlanta, to an extent, they just obviously started getting good. So. Yeah, I mean it's a little bit tougher in the East now, and when you have a young team, it's hard to. You got to learn to win. You got to learn to minimize mistakes, and it's a work in progress. I didn't expect this team to win more than 20-ish games, and so I'm not really surprised by what's going on. And I figure there'd be a few more blowouts just because they are a lot younger and don't really have the stable veteran presence that they did last year.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. Is people don't realize that role that Blake did have, even though he might have not been playing as much or playing to the level that they expected. On the phone, we got the legend himself, James Edwards III from The Athletic, Pistons beat writer.
Cardigan King,
yes, sir. And we were talking with James, just before the break of, how can this young team salvage? What can they learn? And James was sitting there saying, it's learn to win in the fourth and close out games. But I kind of wanted to shift to talk just a little bit, James, as, we've seen with this fan base and especially a lot on Twitter that we've already talked about. Is everyone gets so trigger happy when it comes to trades and stuff like that. And obviously the big name going around is Jeremy Grant. You've heard all the rumors, floating with his name in it, Lakers as a possibility. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think ultimately is Jeremy Grant's future here in Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's more of a possibility he gets traded than this time last year, last summer, just given where the team is, given that he's turned into a pretty valuable asset for Detroit. I think obviously Detroit wanted him in hopes of building him as part of their core, but another reason is they believed he could turn into an asset. And he makes $18 million, which isn't a lot for a guy that does what he does. And obviously, as you guys know, and see all the rumors that there are a lot of teams interested. So good pickup by Weaver, not just from getting a good basketball player, but also adding an asset to a team that didn't necessarily have very many of them. Do I think he gets traded? Yes, I do. I wouldn't bet money on it, but I do think it's likely. Just because, like I said, the team is clearly rebuilding. They need more assets. They need more kind of they call it strikes at the pot. Get more hands in the pot. Get draft picks, young players. I think it'll be if there is a trade, it'll be something mutual. I don't think Jeremy will be blindsided. I'm sure there's been discussions, will be discussions. I could see like an Aaron Gordon situation of I think last year where whoever trades for him signs him to an extension. I could see Jeremy being in the position now with 1 year left on his deal after this year that he wants an extension, and that's probably where you see some of the the trade discussions coming, because obviously for the Pistons, they have to consider if it's worth giving him bigger money, given where they are. So definitely think it's possible. I wouldn't tell anybody to go bet money on it if it's on any of your sports books, but it's certainly a
use promo code Woodward.
Something to monitor.
Yeah, and speaking of like young players too, if you guys are betting on sports books, by the way, use promo code Woodward at mybookie.com. But young players and fans being trigger happy. One that I'm kind of tired of, but also a little bit undecided on is Killian Hayes, and his name being brought into this conversation. He's just so young. It's only his second year, and I feel like you don't necessarily need every single player to be, a 5-star draft pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously it would help if it was, but the way the NBA works is, there's some role players, and on a rookie contract, you're not paying him a lot of money. Like, is there any truth to that rumor, or do you see him making a move at any time, or do you think we should keep him?
I would be surprised if a move happened this year. I agree with you. Like, it's whether you think Killian has potential, whether you don't. It's still too soon for them to, I think, punt unless a deal comes up where it's just you're getting a better, like plain and simple, better player and a young player. I think getting Cade does, frankly, make him expendable. If there's a 2 guard that comes out that pops up that becomes available. I mean, obviously, as you guys know, you want Cade kind of being more of the primary ball handler. It does help, though, to have another guy who can handle the ball next to him. So I think it all kind of depends on what pops up and if it fits the Pistons' timeline and it makes sense. But I don't anticipate them moving on from Killian this year. I think they see him as kind of the steady ship right now. He's not flashy, but he kind of is a little bit of the glue of that first unit. So they like him. They believe in him. It's still too early to write him off or crown him. There are obviously positives in his game, solid defender. The numbers might not show it, but he has improved in terms of attacking the rim, just what you want to see from him as he grows. The shooting has improved. So it's marginal steps, but, I mean, like you said, not everybody needs to make the giant leaps right away. And so I think if you look, you see improvements. So I just would be very surprised if they punted on him now, but you never know what kind of deals pop up.
Just a personal opinion, how long do you give a guy until you want to see something out of him? Because I know that was an issue here last year with Demboya, and that was a big thing too. Guys wanted to keep him, but I think it's like a 2-year max to see what you are. And again, some guys, you're a role player. I don't necessarily want to get rid of you because you still have value on this team. Like Killian plays great defense, but how long do you give a guy before you're ready and willing to pull the trigger?
I'm usually I don't know. I'm a little more lenient. It's usually for me 3-ish years, especially with this group of young players. They haven't had a normal NBA season yet. The rookie class last year came in with no fans, no training camp, no preseason. This year, how many of the guys are – everybody except Sadiq Bey is in protocol. I mean, you can make excuses for both sides, but, I mean, these guys haven't had normal seasons. So it's a little hard to evaluate. But usually, I mean, you just look at the league and see so many guys who, after a year, 2 or 3, can make pretty good leaps. I mean, Darius Garland wasn't blowing the world away his first 2 years, and now he's a borderline all-star. Jared Allen. I mean, I could go down the line. There's a lot of guys. Chris Middleton. There's a lot of guys. Spencer Dinwiddie. You guys all know him too well. There's always guys that maybe catch it 3-4 years in. And again, I'm not opposed to making trades and trading some of these guys if an opportunity situation presents itself that makes sense. But I don't know if it makes sense to get rid of them just for the sake of getting rid of them, and I don't think the Pistons have anywhere near that line of thinking.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best way to say it, too. It's when Killian was being drafted, he was not going to be the scorer. He was never going to be that guy. We knew that. You saw that in his prospect, and I know everyone wants him to shoot more and score more, but I look at a guy that I've admired for years, and Rajon Rondo, and he's never been a scorer. He's just a playmaker. Can you provide those guys with the open looks? Can you spread the floor and make the smart decisions? And, looking ahead, obviously it's hard not to do when this Pistons team's 5-28. Obviously, they hold the best odds for that top draft pick yet again. James, I want to get your opinion of who's the guy that maybe you're already looking at that you've kind of fallen in love with. Maybe I don't know if you've fallen in one with yet with between Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, and Jabari Smith.
Yeah, I'd say Jabari's probably the clubhouse leader for me right now. I just like his game. I like his versatility. I like his fluidity as a player. I think he not only provides something the Pistons need, but he's interesting, and I think there's a lot of room for like all-star caliber player. I'm a little bullish, or not bullish. I'm a little weary of Holmgren. I worry about the size in terms of the frame. And I'm just I gotta see it. It's one of those guys that if I don't pick him and he ends up being good, well, that's all right. Shame on me. I didn't see it, but he's a guy I want to see it before I don't know. There's something about it. It's hard to put a finger on it, but we'll see. Paolo, I like. I just right now Jabari Smith is kind of the front runner for me. I just like what he provides. From what I've heard, good character kid. I think he would fit right in.
And he was definitely a guy that kind of, flew under the radar to start the season. He wasn't really a talked about guy like Holmgren has, and he's flown up the draft boards at Auburn already. So that's kind of, it's a little bit of an, not saying underdog story, but it's huge development that, it could provide something good for the Pistons if you don't get that overall pick, because someone's probably going to take Chet. Like, I think all three of those guys, you can't really necessarily go wrong. I know you have your worries about Chet you watch him on TV, it's like he is pencil thin. Like, he takes pencil thin to a whole new meaning.
I agree with you on Chet, because you don't see guys like that. The one you do is Kevin Durant, but there's only one Kevin Durant in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not expecting to duplicate that. It's just tough.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm just not sure he's going to be. Do I think he could be a good player? Yeah, of course. Do I think he's worthy of? If there's Jabari and Paolo on the board, would I risk it and take him over those two? That's where I kind of have my hesitation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. How the college basketball season unfolds. It's going to be crazy to see how this Pistons team, gets back together and see if, maybe they can't flip the script a little bit, kind of what Houston did, is go on a huge run and win some games, build some confidence. But James, we want to thank you for coming on today, man. Obviously,
you've reached the end of the video. You know what you should do? Press like. You know you like the content that we have here at Woodward Sports Network. I'm Braylon Edwards from the bottom line. Subscribe to us right now.